Hi everybody and welcome to the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. We are kicking off series 3, can you believe it, with episode 1, and we're joined by the absolutely incredibly inspirational Charlotte Fairall, who is founder and CEO of Sophie's Legacy. If you haven't already heard of Sophie's Legacy, if you're not following them or donating, then please do check them out. If you could bottle all of the tenacity, motivation and inspiration of this human into one bottle, oh my goodness, the world would be such an amazing place. Enjoy the episode.
Today she'd been unwell for quite a few months, but never did I think
That was the outcome.
I thought maybe she had allergies that had come back, dairy allergies or something of our sort, but the moment she started bleeding, which was obviously 8 days before that, I knew then something was more serious.
Yeah.
And all of it, and it's drilled into you what to look out for meningitis. But sadly, more children die from cancer than they do meningitis every year. And I think, why can't it be the same? Why are we not, educating not only parents of what to look out for, but there is no current training course for any health professional, GP, nurses, anyone on children's cancer in this country. And I shouldn't have to keep fighting as hard as I am to keep getting some of these changes.
It should be way simpler.
It's and it's really sad because in those 3 years we could have ended, being much further ahead. But that's why I really want this change for her.
Hi everybody and welcome to this amazing episode of the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. Today we are joined by the phenomenal Charlotte Fairall, who is charity founder, CEO of Sophie's Legacy. I'm so grateful that you've come along and joined with me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
No, I really appreciate it. It was funny actually because I was like, right, how do I get hold of Charlotte? And then sometimes I'll send people friend requests on Facebook and they're probably like, who on earth is this human? And then where we're a drop-off point for donations for Sophie's Legacy, I just called one of the delivery guys, like one of the guys that comes to collect, and I was like, hi. I was like, it's Kashir from JK Wellness. I was like, have you got Charlotte's number? And he was just so lovely. They're just such a lovely bunch, aren't they?
We're really lucky with our volunteers who are just amazing with what they do.
Yeah, and it's one of those things actually, when the van turns up on the Havant Road outside JK Wellness, it makes me smile so much because it's bright and it's yellow and it's gorgeous and it's colourful, and then you have a moment where you're reminded of why it's there and why it's so beautiful and colourful and got Sophie's wonderful pretty face on it, but we'll come to that, I'm sure. But I wanted to know a bit about you, Charlotte. I wanted to know your background and your work history. Actually surprised me when I went on and done my stalking. I was just like, oh, you've got this whole life before Sophie's Legacy charity. So where did life start for you? Where were you born? What was growing up like?
So I was born at Winchester Hospital.
Oh, lovely. We call that the countryside here in Pompey, don't we? In the countryside.
I definitely was on the countryside. I grew up on a farm.
Oh, wow.
So my dad was a dairy, milks cows.
Actual farming?
He was a farmer.
Oh, wow.
So he used to go off and milk cows. He didn't own the farm, but he was the dairy farmer, but always got a house with his job, which
perfect.
was nice. So we lived on a farm growing up, but I grew up in Whitchurch, so just like near Andover sort of way.
Yeah.
So very, lovely running out in the fields, doing that.
At what point did you move to Hampshire?
So
Is Andover classed as Hampshire?
It is Hampshire,
isn't it? Yeah.
And Whitchurch is still Hampshire. So I've always lived in Hampshire, and apart from when I went to Dorset, Wiltshire. But I say when my dad died, I moved back to Whitchurch with my mum and took a year out from uni and then decided actually I'm gonna go back and I went back to Bournemouth, but is still living at home, so I travelled back each day from Whitchurch to Bournemouth every day, which is a good old trek. Got to know that motorway very well.
Yeah.
But I qualified as a social worker.
Amazing.
So I was 21 when I qualified, which was the youngest at that point that you could, because that was what it used to be like. It wasn't a degree at that point, it was a diploma in social work, but I loved it and found my passion.
What made you want to go into social work in the first place?
I always wanted to work with children.
Okay.
So I always knew that. It was trying to find the niche.
Yeah.
But I just always wanted to help children and make a difference.
Yeah.
And I thought social work is what I want. And doing a few experiences and different things, and I just thought I love this. So I thought if I could make a difference.
Tough skin, right? To do
and
that.
I probably wouldn't have said I was that tough.
Yeah.
Really, but I just had that quite caring compassion and really wanting to make a difference to children's lives. And I thought if I can go in and make a difference to one family in my career, then I've done a good job. And
that's I mean, I've got friends who have gone on to do social work, and it's full on, isn't it? Like the hours aren't 40 hours a week. Like it's beyond life. And you carried on doing that even when you became a mum and you started having your own family.
Yeah.
What a juggle.
It was definitely a challenge, and I try to weigh up that challenge. And I started going in, I worked for charity to start with, 2 charities. So Andover Young Carers I worked for, so I used to work with children whose parents had a drug and alcohol or mental health challenges.
Okay.
So I used to work with them, which I loved, and really been able to make a real direct difference, because you haven't got the red tape which a lot of the sort of statutory services have. And then I moved to the Hampton Trust. They had a pilot project for a year.
Okay.
And that was doing work in Basingstoke. They had funding for a year to set up a project for children affected by domestic violence. Wow. And they wanted to say, right, here's the money, go and make a difference in a year, prove that this can work. And I managed to do that, worked with about 150 children that year, set it up from scratch. I was just like, but it was good practice for what was to come.
Oh, I know.
Unbelievable.
If only you'd have known, right? That project, I guess, like dealing with something from the beginning through to the execution of it, and then looking at how it's helped and how it's worked.
Definitely.
Did you ever have friends that were sort of, I guess, receiving help from social services or anything like that when you were growing up?
No, not really. I've lived in my sort of cocoon world. But I sort of got to know, I was always that sort of, at school, like that really just quite caring and wanting to always help those who were, not
as loved, maybe.
Yeah, and just seeing that. I mean, I had a fair bit of challenges during, I was bullied quite heavily at school in secondary, mainly about weight or the way you looked and stuff. And so I always wanted to look after that underdog in a way and sort of help people and make that difference. And I think that's what's my little drive really, to see it through. So it was actually working for the Hampton Trust and that Basingstoke project that I met what was to become my husband, and he lived in the sort of Fairham way.
Right.
So that's what got me down.
Closer to Pompey.
So that's what brought me down here. Yeah. But he obviously, we moved in together, and this is what I call my home now.
Yeah.
I've been down here 20 plus years, so
wow.
I wouldn't see anywhere else as home now. I love it. By the sea, which is
south
lovely.
of Hampshire now.
Definitely, and I absolutely love it. So and obviously I went on to have my oldest, who's now 18, which is a scary thought.
Oh my goodness.
You got an adult
child to have an adult child.
Oh, I feel it sometimes.
And is she going off to uni or what?
So she's just in her last year of A-levels.
Amazing.
And she's not sure what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. And I think she wants to go travelling, which I think would be a really good thing for her. She loves travelling. Yeah. So I've said, just go off and see the world, and you don't have to make a decision now.
Yeah.
The world is there's so much that you can do, and it's hard to sort of pigeonhole into one or two things.
Yeah, and I think that it's so much harder to go travelling and do those things once you've established yourself in a career, and you kind of end up on this hamster wheel, don't you, where it's almost impossible to get off.
Definitely.
So yeah, no, I love that. Pro that. Go travelling, do it.
Definitely. I'm just like, you've got to live life,
Yeah.
like, and we've definitely obviously been taught that, you know, even more so. But I've said, just go off and live your life. Just go off and travel, do all the things you want to do. You don't have to sort of settle down. You know, you always have your bed here and come back.
Exactly. And that's
you know,
lucky,
your base,
it?
and you know, if you wanted to go off and do that or go off to uni, it's
you're there
you know,
to
there's no
support her
pressure
regardless. Yeah.
And
that's good.
So I've obviously had 3 children, and then. But yeah, I did my child protection, so I went in after working for charities. I went off and worked for the local authority.
Yes.
I thought, I've got to be able to do this, because I couldn't feel I was a fully fledged social worker until I'd done that.
And that's funny though, because a lot of people do it the other way round.
They do.
I know social workers that have gone in and worked for the local authorities and then gone, get me out of here. But you've done it the other way round. So that's so brave. Quite politically rebellious, if one would say.
It is, definitely. But
how did you find that transition?
So it was tough, because I've been qualified for over 3 years. So I was deemed as an experienced social worker, but actually I hadn't ever worked in the local authority. So
which is a whole different kettle of fish.
It's very different. Like, and so going into child protection, I didn't just go into a general. I went in, wham, bam, here you go.
Hardcore.
And my patch was that the area that I covered was Havant and Waterlooville.
Wow.
And Hayling Island. But so it was an amazing experience. You know, I would have said I hope to help lots of families, because I always say that, and I think the social work still has a lot of stigma of like, you're there to take children away.
100%,
And I'll be like, look, I don't want to take your children away.
I want to help you.
I want to help you keep them, but this is what you need to do in order to keep your children. And if you do that, you'll keep them. But if you don't, you haven't got any options.
There's no choice kind of thing.
And I always felt, if I could be honest and upfront with all the families, even if it was hard to tell them that, that's how I would want to be if it was on the other foot. And that's how I always treated them, going, I'm just going to tell you how it is, and then it's their choice.
If they listen, they listen, and if they take that help, then they do. Did you find that there was a lot of red tape working for local authority, like really slow kind of process?
And there was always some families who you just think something's not right. And I know that something's not right. And you can't teach that, but it was a gut instinct from going in, and I'd be like,
but you'd have to prove it.
And that's what people don't think, that we can just go into it. We have to have evidence. And not just a little bit. Sometimes you've got to have quite a lot of evidence to back up what your gut instinct is telling you. And
you were working as part of the adoption process and matching when Sophie was diagnosed.
Well, I'd actually just started a new job. It's the shortest job I'd ever had.
Right, okay.
So I'd done my 16 years, but I'd just started in a school in Bishop's Waltham, 2 days. And then on the 3rd day I took Sophie up to A&E. But it was a safeguarding role within a primary school, which I thought I finally got my work-life balance sorted.
Absolutely.
And really thought I'd hit like the jackpot of like, those jobs just never came up in social work. So it was unbelievable. I did make a big difference in 2 days though. I made my stamp at that. I've already referred a family to social work department in the 2nd day. So I would have been an amazing job, and a real sort of balance between having, being a mum, which always was, number one, but also then still doing what I loved, which was social work. So 2 days was my shortest job I've ever had in my life.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And then sadly, obviously, I took Sophie up on the Saturday. She'd been unwell for quite a few months, but never did I think
that was the outcome.
That it was. I thought maybe she had allergies that had come back, dairy allergies or something of our sort. But the moment she started bleeding, which was obviously 8 days before that, I knew then something was more serious.
So take us through that, if you don't mind.
And
I think, I kind of mentioned to you before we started recording that this podcast episode, for me, the build up and the anxiety was prevalent, and it's because you've been through every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So how do you talk about that, and how do you kind of tackle that in a way that's informative? But I think that shines in everything that I've seen you do as an outsider. It's so important, not just Sophie's legacy and what you've done moving forwards, but also the information sharing of how Sophie, the build up to where it got to, but then also the treatment that she received thereafter, and the importance of flying that flag.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the only way that we're going to create change, which is obviously our tagline, which is what I really wanted to set out to do. I thought, I can't change the outcome of what's happened, and I wish we could, but we can go out and make a difference.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that sometimes is keep sharing the journey, keep sharing the things that weren't great, so that we can make that difference. And the more I keep shouting or raising that voice or advocating, then the more hopefully that will change. But and I think that it still feels like none of social work, which is why people find out my background.
Do you kind of like compartmentalise it? Is that the right thing?
I think there's elements of
as if it's an entity of you rather than you.
And there's bits where I find engaged in feelings of certain bits that it reduces me to tears every time. I think I've put some of this in a box, and I do a lot of my grieving in private. I'm one of those who is, if you see me crying, it's rare because I cry at home behind closed doors, and that still happens even 3 years on. But it's rare for people to see me in tears in public, just because I think I've learned over the years, even with social work, you just learn how to put a front on.
Yeah, it's almost like that career definitely built you to be able to handle your grief in the way that you have, and your emotions. Because you've had to switch them off when dealing with children that are going through things, and
it's a really challenging stuff. Really challenging. It's like you don't do social work for 16 years and not see some horrific things. And trust me, I've seen a lot, but it's
nothing probably prepares you for what was to come. So what you say that Sophie was poorly leading up, and I think this is something that is quite common, right?
It is.
Children being diagnosed later than they should be or could be.
We have got, actually in the UK, we're one of the worst sort of countries in Europe. The rate of the diagnosis rate, really, the speed of which they're diagnosed. So we're even behind Romania on that, which is shocking when you think of the system we have, which is a free NHS system, and we have some of the amazing expertise, but it's just missed, and sadly that just keeps happening. But there are some that get diagnosed quicker, but it's a lot more diagnosed through A&E than any other route.
Wow.
And that is a huge contrast to adults' cancer. That isn't the case. So there is a clear difference, but when you look and you delve in much deeper, which is what we've done, you can see why. So I say to lots of people, would you know the signs and symptoms of children's cancer, of any of them? Would you know what you're looking out for? And I didn't.
I don't.
I wouldn't have a clue.
I still don't.
If you had
really.
a child with leukemia or lymphoma or any of the solid tumours, would you know what you're looking out for? And I didn't. But we would if we had breast cancer, or if we had lung cancer, or bowel cancer, because that's been really out there in the press. Or if you have a cough more than 3 weeks, and starts doing it, or if you're having blood in your stools, you think of bowel cancer. Think of all those things, but we don't know what we're looking for with children.
And I think that that's a lack of education, absolutely. And I also think that it's, and I can only speak for myself, but as a parent, turning a blind eye to a certain degree, because you don't want to think about those things. And so I think that it kind of goes hand in hand. But I think that it's the same with, as a parent, your biggest fear is also leaving your children. And so I do turn a blind eye to the symptoms and things that I should be looking out for in myself, but then almost you can't, because it is drilled into you, right, through media, through social media. So if that education for children's cancer was kind of drilled in through the media and social media, then you wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye.
I think so, and I've said it a lot to politicians, to other people, because obviously there's the whole thing of, well, we don't want to scare people, and actually we'll have everyone thinking they've got cancer with their child, and it's not. And I said, but it's no different to meningitis.
Yeah.
Everyone gets taught those symptoms.
Yeah.
When, I mean, we all know those sort of,
and you see the
classic,
posters
the
and the
card you
toilets
get when you were
everywhere
born and all of it, and it's drilled into you of what to look out for meningitis. But sadly, more children die from cancer than they do meningitis every year. And I think, why can't it be the same? Why are we not, educating not only parents of what to look out for, but there is no current training course for any health professional, GP, nurses, anyone on children's cancer in this country.
That's really backwards.
It's shocking. They get a small amount of training when they during their qualifications, when they're qualifying as a GP or a nurse, a very small amount, and that's it.
That's insane.
So when you think the GP we saw, I would have said he was probably qualified at least 20, 30 years. What is chance of picking that up? I mean, I don't blame him, because actually, if people aren't given the right tools to keep that education up, how are they ever meant to know what to look out for? So, and had I known this all, I would have known actually I should have stuck with my gut instinct more, rather than putting all of my trust into a GP of going, okay, they've qualified, they know what they're looking out for.
Yeah.
I should have gone with, actually I know something's not right.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept pushing for at the end. But yeah, it's hard. But I didn't know this, and not for a second did I think childhood cancer was going to come to us.
No.
And that's what I think a lot of parents think, it's not going to happen to us.
100%.
Same
with cancer.
It's rare.
As a
It's not going to happen.
You don't. Yeah, you think
It's not rare, is what people think. It's 1 in 450 children are diagnosed by the age of 15. It's
huge.
So much more common than what people think. And the week that Sophie was taken, I took her up to A&E at Portsmouth. 5 children that week in Portsmouth had been diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
In one hospital.
That's insane.
In this one area. It's not rare.
What did that kind of lead up look like?
So she'd had stomach pains. She was waking up with tummy pains, which initially you're like, you need the toilet, or you've eaten too much last night,
or
you need to put it off to so many things. Which I look back now and think, maybe put off too much. But because she wasn't making a big deal of it initially.
Right.
And you think, God, my tummy hurts. It's like, that could be anything.
Yeah, of course.
And this was COVID times.
Yeah.
So to see a GP was like challenging. So we weren't going to see that unless it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
So, but she just had stomach pain. She was feeling sick. She was struggling to eat in the mornings, and I was like, something's not right. So I was phoning the GP, and they obviously initially prescribed Gaviscon, and I was like, well, that's not right. So I never gave it to her, because I was like, the pain is down here, like the lower tummy, not. I know what Gaviscon's in half. I thought, that's not right. And then obviously later on, she had a week in bed, 5 days in bed, not able to move. She was just like, I feel so sick, and it's hurting me to move. And I was like, right, phone the GP, and I said, I want you to see her, that something is not right. And this was about the middle of August. And we'd been away up in Orkney Islands, and she'd been struggling throughout that holiday, feeling unwell, and I was like...
And was she not typically a kind of
not
child
really.
that would be sick
And
often?
it became so much more persistent to start with, probably around and it's hard to look back now, but around that sort of July-ish time, she was saying, my tummy hurts, and you're like, okay, fob it off. But then it was persistent. It was like every day, and I was like, something's not right. This is now, and he did see her, and we finally got the GP to see her that week, and felt her tummy, and said it feels hard, but it's probably a bowel infection. It will just improve on its own, hopefully, if it doesn't come back.
Right.
I thought, okay, that's fine. And then a few days later, she started picking up. I thought, brilliant, she's getting better. But then she was going on holiday with her cousins. She was very excited about this. Her cousins and Nan and Grandad up in Wales. And but on the second day of that holiday, she started bleeding, but didn't know what. I didn't have a conversation with her period. She'd just turned 9, literally a week or 2 before. So I'd not had any conversations at this point. She didn't know what it was. She was too embarrassed to say anything to her grandparents or cousins. And it was only when she came back, and I was obviously sorting her clothes out and washing, and I thought, what's happened here? There was blood, on her underwear. I was like, so I said to her, what's happened? She said, I don't know, Mum, but I'm still bleeding. And I was like, okay. And And it is that mum thing going, why didn't you speak to me? Like, why did you not?
Was your initial reaction that maybe it could have been her period because of the
Initially, I thought,
pain and
well, if
feeling
you're still
different?
bleeding, yeah, I thought, but I thought this is not her period. She's not developed in any way.
No.
This is not her period.
Yeah.
But I immediately phoned the GP up, and this was on the Friday, the 4th of September, and I said, look, something's not right. She's bleeding. She's been bleeding now for about 8 days. I know that this is not her period. Like, I just know. It's a mother's instinct.
Yeah.
And it's the first
And
period.
I think usually
8
it's
days
8
is not right.
No, they're usually quite light, aren't they? And I think usually
and she was getting heavier
tend to
each
develop,
day.
like buds and all sorts of things happen before your
Nothing
period
at all.
comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's and I'd obviously had Lucy had already started, so I knew
what to look out for.
And said she just turned 9, and they said, well, it's possible. I said, it might be possible, but I'm telling you, it's not for Sophie. This is not her period. But they wouldn't see her. And over the phone, they said, we'll call you back Monday, and if she's still bleeding, we'll get you in. I was like, okay. And then I woke up Saturday morning, and I just thought, I was painting my hallway actually, and I just had this thing of going, this little voice going, sort it. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to phone 111 because something's not right. And that took hours and hours going back and forward with them.
And was this 2020?
Yeah. So again, it was all just COVID time, so it was really hard to see or access any healthcare. And they were, because I was trying to prevent going to hospital, because I thought the last place we want to go is hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're being drilled to
not to go, exactly, and use all the other services first, which is what we tried to do. But she, so anyway, long story short, with 111, they obviously were saying, well, it'd be a period. I said, it's amazing how you can all tell me it's a period and no one has seen her.
That's insane.
I was like, and I was obviously going back to social work going, I thought, no one's checking that there's nothing else. Like, I know from like sexual abuse and all the other stuff.
Yeah, like,
not saying that anyone
there's no
else,
safeguarding going on at all.
No one had even checked anything.
That's mad, isn't it?
So I was like, this is not right. And so I was going, right, this needs to be sorted. And they said, well, if you're that concerned, take her up to A&E. And I said, well, that's what I'll do then. So I took her up to Portsmouth A&E that day, and she wasn't happy. I was pulling off roadblocks, and she was like happy playing with her friends. And she was like, I'm fine, Mum. I said, you're not. And you look at her in the waiting room, and you think she was full of energy, running around, and you think, am I just... am I
going mad?
I just think, I'm just going to walk in and they're going to tell me, why have you come here? But I just
something
knew.
inside of you
I knew. And they was really empty. Like, children's A&E was so quiet that day. And we went straight through, and pretty soon saw a doctor, and he said, how long do you have this lump for? And I went, what lump? And they found a 12 centimetre tumour in her abdomen. It was huge, this abdomen, it just encased pretty much most of her body.
So the doctor who had seen her previously had said, oh, she's got a bit of swelling,
hard,
but had not...
That was a tumour.
Wow.
Because that was only about 2-3 weeks before.
Wow.
So we know it was definitely a tumour. It was growing about... We now know roughly about a centimetre a week. So it was definitely a tumour that was missed. Which is hard, because it wouldn't have made much difference, to be honest, 3 weeks.
And do they give you that sort of information in front of Sophie?
No, so they obviously initially were like, didn't tell me much, but I knew. I've taken in with other children training over the years, and I knew something was serious, because the way that they were questioning, there was like, and the way that we had lots more people coming in, a lot more tests, I thought they found something here. It was just, and they were saying you need to stay in overnight and you're going to be transferred to Southampton the next day, and I was like, yeah, well, we're not going there for nothing. They just said her tumour markers are slightly raised, and they were only slightly. Bear in mind she had a huge tumour, but they're only slightly raised, but they said that there's a mass in her tummy and that needs to be sorted out. So, but they obviously didn't tell me that in front of Sophie. So that was, and Sophie had never spent a night in hospital. She was like, I get to spend a night in hospital. She was all excited. I was like, careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Especially looking back now. But so she was all excited. Still, I've not even spent one night here. So yeah, we stayed there. We got transferred the next day. Well, I drove to Southampton the next day. Went to G4 ward, which was a surgical ward, because initially they were like, they didn't really know what it was. but they knew they needed it out. So
Right.
that's why we were in the surgery ward, because they were like, we're going to have to remove this. And they weren't sure why she was bleeding. That was a real, even as when we were in Southampton, it was a real weird one for them.
Yeah.
Because it didn't fit with anything.
Okay.
But I'm glad in a way it did, because I think we would have carried on much longer.
Yeah.
Had it not, because you just never would have thought it was going to be that. So so she had MRI, which was the most horrific MRI of the lot. Absolutely horrendous for her. It was just the pain, having to kneel to be held down by sandbags, just trying to get her still because she was in so much pain.
Wow.
And
Being
sitting there watching
the
the tumour pressing on her as she's lying down. But they needed those images, and it was just horrific to watch. I was in there with her and just,
And in those moments, you're likely trying to be brave
yeah,
and not show her,
Yeah.
you know, because you know that you need to get the end result to help her.
yeah.
It must
So
just
many
be
times
awful.
of her journey that was like that, and inside you just want to crumble or get someone else to take over because you're like. But again, we had the whole of our journey that only one adult was allowed in hospital because of COVID. There was not allowed two of us, so I did.
You're there on your
all of
own.
it. So there was, and the siblings weren't allowed in. So yeah, no one else. Like you couldn't have a friend with you or anything else. It was you on your own. And I'm glad I had the resilience built up in my years before.
Yeah.
From what I'd gone through.
Yeah.
To give me that bit of, okay, I've got to be strong now. I can't crumble. My daughter's in front of me. She needs me to be strong. She doesn't need me to break, and that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she did. We did loads of different imaging and CT and everything else, and obviously what they looked at, that they thought. But you know, I remember the surgeon having a call with me and Sophie's dad and saying, it doesn't look benign, but it doesn't look cancerous. And I went, well, it's one of them, isn't it? And I remember saying, I bet you it's as rare. I bet it's something really rare, and it does why it doesn't look like it should. And they were like, you know, they were like, oh no, don't be worried. And I was like, no, this is serious, I know it is. But she went into surgery on the 10th at Southampton, and actually we'd signed consent for them to remove her ovary, because they said if it is going to be cancerous, it looks like the ovary's attached to it, so we're going to have to remove her ovary. I said, to save her, that's what we need you to do. But actually her ovary, it was just sat on top.
Right.
It wasn't attached to it at all, and actually it remained intact. But it was encased to everything else. It was, and when they opened her up, they saw something quite different to what they thought was going to be, and much more complex for them in surgery. So she was in, I think, at least about 6 hours surgery. And of course I was stuck in a room waiting. I wasn't allowed to leave. I was like,
because if you left, you couldn't come back, right?
well, it's just so you can't really get out of the hospital because there was like security
'Cause-
on the
yeah,
door.
exactly.
It was just so difficult. So they wanted you, and because of the whole COVID, they don't want you moving around too much. So you really have to be staying in. So I just stayed in the room and binged on Netflix, literally waiting for her to come back, or for them to come and get me. And they did come and get me, and they pulled me into a side room. And you see it on TV, and you think, you know, this is not good.
Yeah.
And
I
I
can't
just
imagine dealing with all of that on your own.
I know.
Wow,
I mean, I had a nurse with me, and they pulled me in. I thought, this is not going to be good. I knew then instantly. I thought they're going to tell me not great. I just said, "Is she alright?" And they said, "Yeah, she's come round. She's fine, but it's definitely cancer." And they said, "We can't get rid of it all. We've removed about 95% of this, but if we took it all out, we would have had to have removed a limb and everything else. It would have been horrific, like life changing."
Yeah.
And they said, we didn't feel at this point it was right for her to do that.
Right.
So we've removed as much as we could. But this is cancer, and they felt that the surgeon felt at the time it was rhabdomyosarcoma, which is what it ended up being. I don't know how they can tell that. Incredible expertise. But he, and he just said, we're going to have to transfer you to the PB ward. You'll be on our ward to start with till she recovers, and then you'll be going on to, so they'll be coming around to see you. Yeah. And I just sat there and thought, I can't believe it's happening. I thought, a week ago she was on roadblocks running around the room, and now
It's just a cloud, dark
she's,
cloud.
Now she's got to fight this battle, which we knew was going to be tough. But
did they say at that point, like, what stage it was, or what her chances were?
No, not that point. Not long after. So there was it took quite a while to get a diagnosis. They obviously did a biopsy, which came back, and then but there was disputing between hospitals of what it was, so we ended up 3 opinions.
And did that slow down the process of her getting treatment?
No, so we started the treatment based on
like
what they
chemotherapy?
thought, but it did take 3 opinions because there was discrepancies around what it could be.
Right.
Because the cells just looked abnormal.
Yeah.
It does, and it ended up being a really rare type of the rhabdo. And which went back to what I said. I said this is going to be so rare.
Yeah.
And actually, that hospital have never seen this type before.
Wow.
And they're not sure if they've seen many in the whole country actually of her type. It's the most aggressive form that you can get, really.
That's crazy, isn't it?
So,
and is that hereditary in any way, shape, or form? It's just completely at random.
I kept saying, "What have I done then?
Yeah.
What did I do?"
Yeah.
It was because I had an MRI when I was pregnant with her.
Yeah.
Because of my dad's things, I needed to have that to rule out
Yeah.
any risk. And I said, "Was that caused it? Was there anything else?" And I worked through everything because I thought I carried her.
Yeah.
It's got to be something, because it's often developmental.
Looking for something or someone to blame, right?
Yeah, and childhood cancer is often developmental. It's not environmental. It's not lifestyle, which is often what adults tend to be.
Right.
It's very different with children. It's a developmental thing. That's just something. It's like a switch that wasn't switched off at birth, really, and then some point it clicks back on. I think that's how I've interpreted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I carried her then. So what did I do? And I blamed myself for quite a while. I kept going, what else was it? This, and I kept literally my brain.
And at the same time as tackling that side of your own emotions and your mental health, you happen to be obviously really strong for Sophie.
Yeah.
At what point was it, I guess, the right time? Not that there's ever a right time, but at what point did you have to tell Sophie that that's what it was?
So it was quite quick. So after her operation, we waited for the results. Well, we didn't wait for the results. We had the discussion with the consultant from the cancer ward, and I thought, I'm going to have to tell Sophie this. Like, there's no way we're going to not be able to let her know. She was very bright, articulate. She was very astute to everything going on. You were never going to miss.
Yeah.
She was going to pick this up.
Because I know some children and maybe don't have like the emotional intelligence or just the intelligence in general, really, or they're shielded from stuff like that. Like my son, he knows what cancer is. We've had conversations about it over the years. So she was the type of child where you could. Yeah, she knew what it was.
She knew what it was. We'd lost a good friend. It's actually my oldest daughter, Lucy. Her best friend, Katie. Her mum died when she was 9, and the girls had obviously got to know her, and so that our experience of cancer hadn't been a great outcome. Yeah. Which obviously is a scary thing. I'm having to tell your child then you've got cancer. But I told her, I think it was a few days later, it was quite quick, I know that. Mainly because there was, we're not going to go to oncology ward when it's got oncology. Yeah. So we're going to be able to hide her. She'd be like, why am I here?
Best to be honest and open with that.
I think so, and what I've always been like, and I say it all the way through my social work career, I've always said, you just got to be open and honest. Yeah. And then people can deal with the truth. Yeah. And I've always been like with the children.
You can tackle it together.
Just be open and honest with people, and I've drilled that in around adoption with people, and said don't ever hide that they're adopted, just be open and honest, and they'll grow up knowing, and it won't be a big thing, and they'll be much more thankful. And I thought, I've got to be honest with her, and however hard this is, I've got to tell her, and we did. I did tell her, and obviously initially she said, well, I'm not going to have treatment because I'm not going to lose my hair.
Oh, bless her.
I was like,
yeah,
right, you're going to need it.
There's no getting around that.
And so she did, and we just talked through lots. But losing her hair was really, really tough for her. She had a lot of tears.
She had beautiful, beautiful blonde
hair, and she said, "I'm not going to be beautiful for the boys anymore," which really sort of was like, "You are beautiful, and it takes more than just hair, to make you beautiful." Yeah, But at that point, it was massive, and she was in tears every time the hair fell out. It was, I wish in a way she let us just shave it off. Yeah, because it felt like it dragged on. Yeah, really traumatic.
Was she able to come home?
Yeah, so we came home after about a week after surgery, which was complicated with surgery, but she finally bounced back and recovered as quick as they do. It's amazing, children. And came back home, I think it's for a week. I think it was a week or so they came back for. And then we started chemo, inpatient, which was obviously at Southampton, and but 4 different types of chemo drugs given to her.
Wow.
And when they come in with one of them, which is like a red bag of chemo, and I just went, it's like poison.
Wow.
I had to put in her.
Yeah.
And I was like, and signing consent forms for this sort of stuff is tough.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't want to give all this.
No.
It's given her a life sentence, which it absolutely would have, for radiotherapy and chemo. But there isn't, it's not really consent.
No.
Because the radiotherapy, I actually said, I don't want to sign it.
No.
And they said, we sort of need to. Yeah. Because I said, well, what happens if I don't? And they said, well, you're reducing the chances of survival. And I was like, well, I can't really not.
Yeah.
So, but it's not really consent, I don't think. Because I don't really want her to have it.
Yeah.
But you have to. You don't get a choice. But yeah, so the rounds were tough.
Did you not want her to have it because you didn't believe that it was going to make enough of a difference?
No, it's just I'm giving her a life sentence of healthful issues the rest of her life.
Yeah. So had she have survived the cancer, she would have been left with
huge lip stuff.
Right.
Because she had radiotherapy to the whole of her abdomen.
Right.
So, and basically what radiotherapy does is kill everything in it. So many of her organs would have been damaged, and she would have had menopause before I would have.
Yeah.
In her teens, she would have had potential need for surgery on like a vagina, stuff like that. And she would have struggled to have sex. You know, these things that are not a big thing, but for her,
it's big life-changing things, isn't it?
And massive.
Were you provided with that information, or did you have to go Google that kind of stuff?
No, they told you everything.
Really?
Literally, the list was extensive.
Yeah.
It would damage her spleen, for example. She would be running on antibiotics the rest of her life every day.
So constantly poorly.
Yeah. And I thought, we're not curing her. This isn't giving her a cure, and she'll be cancer free.
Yeah.
But she'll have so many other stuff, but she'll be alive. But that was the ultimate aim, is to get her alive.
Yeah.
Which obviously we wanted, which is why we went ahead with it and doing it. I thought, just haven't got a choice. We have to do it. But you know, all of these things are just challenging, and we had to make the decision whether we freeze our ovaries. And that was before we started radiotherapy. Whether we freeze our eggs, sorry. And I debated long and hard over that. And any of my followers, you know, at the time, remember my post going around. I'm having to make a decision, but I don't know what to do. What's best? Because we're going back in on an area that she'd already been operated on, which the surgery was like, it's not great because we've already opened her up. Her scar was, you know, huge from one end of her tummy into another, to going back in and just to remove her ovaries. And actually, I'm glad we didn't. I made a decision of, given our journey, she knew all about adoption. She knew all about this other stuff, and
your background and the joy that can come from that.
And we actually had a conversation with Sophie about what I wanted her to make some of this decision. It would have been ultimately mine, but I thought, and she just said, "I'll adopt, Mum. Yeah, it's okay. I'll adopt."
What a legend.
And you know, I know you can have children other ways, but actually, I'm glad we didn't, because when we were radiotherapy, they said she'll never carry a child.
Right.
Because even if she fell pregnant, it would not survive.
It wouldn't survive.
Yeah,
that's the damage that it caused.
So I'm glad we didn't put her through another operation.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
I'm really glad now.
What are the symptoms? So if you know, there are people watching this, and hopefully there's people watching this, and you can say, right, here's like you do with breast cancer and cervical cancer, here are like the top 5 signs or the top 5 symptoms. You know, if you could plaster that onto a billboard.
Children, I know there is signs and symptoms awareness cards. We have them, so anyone wants them, please get in touch and we will send them out to you. But because there's lots of different types, you've got blood cancers and solid tumours. They present differently.
Okay.
So the symptoms on the card, you don't have to have them all, because they've lumped blood cancers, solid tumours all in together. Right. But the classics are, like especially with blood cancers, is the bleeding, not bleeding, so the bruising, the being unwell, like they're not getting better, like colds or viruses, they're just persistently unwell. Temperatures, those sorts of stuff. And then the solid tumours, like if you've got brain tumour, then it's often going to be headaches. It's going to be on balance. There'll be sort of a regression, particularly if they're a bit younger. But headaches is a real red flag. And then the whites in the eyes. So sometimes you see like photographs, or I always say encourage people to take their children to opticians, because they will pick up if there's a brain tumour.
Right.
They pick up quite a lot actually, because they can see beyond, and they will refer you straight away. So go and take your children to get an annual checkup of your eyes. That's the best thing you can do. Right. But then the other sort of where the tumours are, like Sophie, is any lump that comes up anywhere on the body. We got to know another one, Lily. She had one that came up, a lump on her leg, like near her knee. It was only the size of like a £2 coin. But it grew, and that was a tumour. So it's a lump anywhere. The hardest one because of Sophie's was that it got huge before we could notice it, because of where it was. I mean, you can carry a lot, like children having babies,
and they're
it
always
takes quite a size
as well,
till they get it pops out.
And I think when they're going through their growth spurts, like my son, he'll get a little bit of a belly, and then he'll shoot up, and it'll disappear, then it'll come again, you know.
But you can feel, you would be able to feel something with the tumours. But it's that certainly the sickness, the being unwell, and it's the persistence. You know, any unexplained bleeding is a red flag.
So it's almost like we'll have to come up with some kind of way of wording it, but like if it's persistent, be persistent. Like as a parent, you know, like if
well, they've got the Grace Kelly Foundation charity. They've come up with like Ladybird, and it's the acronym for all of the different things. It's like loss of weight, paleness, you know, all of those classic sort of things. And say if you go off and Google that, or we've got loads of signs and symptoms cards that we always hand out. But it's one of the big ones on there is you are concerned as a parent. And that is one of the markers and the red flags. Because you know your child, and if they're not right, and you think, and like I was, something's just not right, that is enough to be concerned. And that's what I would say. But go off and look, because actually we should be knowing what to look out for. And actually particularly even under 5, because actually I didn't realise the stats, but actually out of all those children diagnosed, it's about half of them percentage wise are age 0 to 5, that preschool age.
And that's probably a time when you're more likely to allow the persistent colds and infections and things, because they're starting school and nursery, and you just kind of, you're more likely to, I don't want to say fobbed off by doctors and stuff, telling you it's viral.
Absolutely.
And so you find yourself obviously with Sophie going through treatment as an inpatient, and you're up at Southampton, are you at that point?
So the chemo was always at Southampton, the fallout of her chemo, because we'd go home, so we'd have like sometimes, I don't know, 4 or so days as an inpatient chemo, and then we would come home, and then normally within a week we were admitted back to QA, with all the fallout of her treatment, temperatures, or neutrophils were really low, and everything. Just her bowel was her biggest challenge. Obviously that it never recovered from the surgery, to be honest, because the tumour was encased all around her bowel, and it doesn't like to be touched, and they had to pick it all off basically from her bowel, so that never recovered.
Then at that point when you're in hospital, that's when you and Sophie are starting to have conversations about, the fact that you're basically just kind of dumped into the hospital with, and I'm sure nurses and whatnot do all that they can, but this is where Sophie's legacy and the journey of that began, right?
Definitely. And it began fairly soon, because obviously I've been thrown into this world that I'd, packed pretty much, well, I hadn't packed anything to go up to Portsmouth. I actually met her dad on the way through to go off to Southampton the next day, and he quickly gave me a bag of stuff he'd thrown together. He said, I've got nothing. And even that, you try and get men packing bags.
It's not an ideal situation, is it?
That happened a few times. They find things that I swear I've never pulled out of your drawer.
Am I going to need
the stories that the nurses say, they'll tell you some interesting ones, but it was actually 10 days into our journey, I actually fainted in Southampton.
Wow.
And passed out on the floor, and actually Sophie was like, "Mum, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm alright, I'll be fine in a minute," sort of thing. And I just thought, I've hardly eaten in this last week or two. I've lost, a fair bit of weight to start with, but I thought, I've got to be able to look after myself. In order for me to look after Sophie, I've got to somehow focus on me as well.
Yeah.
And that whole thing that they tell you on the airplane, don't they? Put your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
Was it really sort of wrong true?
But the reality of that situation, so you've got obviously 2 other children, you're not able to work, so you started a job and after 2 days you're not able to work, so you're not getting paid. You've got a child who's poorly, you're having to be there. So you've still got bills to pay, a household that needs running. So when you take all of those things into consideration, the last thing you need to be thinking about actually is if you've got a couple of Weetabix,
And to go and get food, you had to leave your child and go down to the bottom floor, we were on G floor at Southampton, to go down to the main floor, which has your M&S or WH Smith.
But when you're jobless, you've got household bills to pay. You're not going to want to be spending money. No. You're not going to want to spend a tenner for a cheese sandwich that's probably don't taste great. No. You're also not going to want to be leaving your child's bedside. So there's just so many reasons why it's insane that there isn't some kind of service for parents and carers.
I know, and I didn't really think of it too much before this, but I think you just assumed that you got fed.
Yeah.
Because you're staying overnight with your child in a bed next to them. They're offered food, but you're offered nothing.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, where do I get food from this?
Is that that must be like an awkward, because I'm, touch wood, like I've never had to stay overnight. My son's never had to stay overnight in hospital, so I've not had that insider experience, but I would imagine that must be a really awkward between you and the nurses, or like the carers, parents and the nurses, of like, oh, here's your child's dinner.
I think
I'm starving. Nice story.
Yeah, I think you don't want to ask. And I think that's why it's never been raised and shouted from the rooftops, because as parents, we'll just focus on the children. Yeah. That's the priority. Let's hear we're fine. I've got enough reserves. I'll live with that.
And I had some toast 3 days ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you just think, okay, the priority is the child, and as long as they're looked after, we always put ourselves last on the list. Of course. And it is often, it's not always, but it's often tends to be the mum that stays in. And I think we are often the ones that do put ourselves last on the list, and we don't prioritise, and we somehow survive and we just make do with what we've got. And I think that's why it's gone on for so long. It's never been a thing, is what we've discovered, is that parents have never been fed. Right back from when they were allowed to start staying in with their child back in around the 60s. There's never been a thought of, well, let's feed them. I thought maybe it's cutbacks or something, but there's never been a focus on this. Wow. And that, I think, quite shocked me, really. I thought, why has this never been like this? So it did, really sort of make me think I've just got to go and grab some food. But what ended up being is food that you can literally just snack things, or stuff that I could just grab and have with me, and not always great. It wasn't a meal as such. Rarely was it a hot meal. But it was like, I just need food, just to survive and get through, to give myself some body, really, to get through. And then obviously we carried on, and obviously that happened for a few months of going through that. And then around the Christmas time, we went up to London to UCLH in Euston Hospital, which is where radiotherapy happens. Right. So the whole south from about Birmingham downwards, like including Cornwall, everywhere. If you have a child that needs radiotherapy, it's in London. Wow. Then the north, from like Birmingham, I think above, is all Manchester and the Christie's, St Christie's Hospital. They're the 2 places that do radiotherapy for children in this country. So it means. And then so you're having to travel with your child. So this was in the second lockdown. God. So this was in December. Where everyone went into tears, and then everyone then went. And then there was that random lockdown, and then everyone went into lockdown straight after. It was awful, wasn't it? You don't know whether you're coming or going. I was in London at that point. We went up on the 21st of December, and And I was like, I've never seen anything like it in London, but and the hospital was absolutely heaving. It was because it was an adult hospital with just this children's ward on the 11th floor.
Yeah, like a little afterthought kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just, it looked like a hotel. It was just this big tower block, really. And yeah, on the 11th floor, stunning, and views of the London. Had to hold on to something. But yeah, but that was a tough old time. That was really, really tough because I was up there on my own, a place I didn't know where I was. Yeah. No access to food at all. They'd got nothing opened in the hospital for like patient like thingy, and I said, where am I meant to get food from? And they said, we just go down the street. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
I'm in London. Hello.
I discovered
I grew up on a farm.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
And Sophie heard that, and she goes, you're not leaving the hospital, Mum. Like, please don't leave the hospital.
Yeah.
She's in a strange place.
Yeah,
she's in London.
She's a body, yeah.
She's like scared. It was an open ward, so we weren't in our own room like we were used to. It was an open ward. It was noisy, scary, and she was like, you can't leave me. I was like, how am I going to get food now? So I either had to wait till she was asleep and then say to someone, please keep an eye on her. If she wakes up, you call me and I'll literally run back. Or I'd get the play worker, who was this, Lucy was this play worker, who specialist, who was just incredible. And she would sometimes come and sit with her and do make slime or do a quiz with her or do something, and I'd be like,
to distract her, yeah.
And I'd run, but you try and wait for lifts on the 11th floor. And I wouldn't mind running downstairs, but I wasn't so regularly able to run up 11 flights.
Not going to happen.
And then get out of the building, and then because the security on the door was so tough, to get back in. Yeah. It was like half an hour, and I'd been running, literally to the shop, grab something, and then run back. And I tell you, that was tough, really tough. And it was just, it just made our journey so much harder than it needed to be. And that's when I was like, Sophie kept saying, everywhere we go, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same.
Like shocked by it.
Yeah, she was like, why are they not feeding you still?
Yeah.
And I sort of knew, I thought, if she's going to change anything, I knew this would go on her list if she was ever, when she started writing her list, I thought if she's going to put some things on there, I thought this is going to end up on it. And because she was just so angry. Yeah. Why are they not feeding you? Because she'd be like, they'd come around and ask for an order, and she'd be like, why are you not feeding my mum? Yeah. I'd like, just give you an order. She's like, no, you're here because you've got no choice to be here, Mum. You're here because I'm unwell. Why are you not feeding my mum?
Even to a small child, it didn't make sense. It's just, and it doesn't make sense. So on the journey of Sophie's Legacy and registering that as a charity, and it blows my mind what you've achieved in such a small period of time. It is absolutely mind-blowing, and it's incredible how some people deal with grief in such different ways. And how you turn something so dark into something so freaking bright and positive. Have you established now at this point why it's not a thing? Because I know you've got to speak with lots of different people in lots of different places in
I think
the UK.
There's just never been raised enough at a high level. We've had some hospitals that they've even gone to the exec board saying, can we feed the parents? Haven't we already been feeding them?
Wow.
So there's hospitals that actually think that they are, and they're like, why are we not feeding them? And they're like, well, because we've never fed them. I'm like, of course, go and feed them then. Wow. That was the Isle of Wight, and there was another one recently that was the same thing. And
so it's not that there's no budget, or not that they can't, because obviously hospitals are geared up with massive kitchens. And,
some of it is the budget. Trust me, we've seen that a lot this year when we're trying to make these changes with the 15 hospitals that we're currently funding around the country, and the way that they had to get the money is they have to sustain this once the funding ends. Right. That was the caveat to getting the money, because I thought I'm not going to give you the money.
So at this moment in time, you fundraise under Sophie's Legacy, and then you're donating that money to, say, QA Hospital. And then when that funding runs out, they have to replace that with their own funds.
Yeah, this is like...
Because you want to see real change.
Yeah, we do. We've done 2 pilot projects now. One last year was the big 9 children's hospitals in the country, like Alderhay being one of them, and they're still carrying on feeding 3 meals a day to every parent that's in there. Amazing. But you've got an incredible chief nurse there who's just driven for Sophie's changes. So, and that is amazing. So we know we can make these changes. And then, but obviously what we wanted to see is those district hospitals. So like Portsmouth is classed as the district ones. It's not the main children's hospital.
Yeah, but you still
and that's what
have
the majority of the
children
hospitals made up with.
Right.
They're not made up with the big children's hospitals.
Yeah.
So mainly where children go is like one children's ward.
Yeah.
So we worked with NHS England, and obviously we wanted to say, right, we want to prove that this can happen. And the evidence, which is so much often to create change, you need the evidence to back up what you I already know.
Yeah.
I feel like going back, you know, saying back, I knew this would be
Nothing
the case.
could have prepared you, like, and I can just imagine them having a meeting with, like, you know, all of these, you know, high up people, whether they're politicians or whether they're, you know, working in the NHS, and them not knowing what's about to walk in. Them having probably an expectation of, oh, you know, someone's mum's little girl, you know, the story, and then you walk in and you're like, right, I'll have you know that.
Yeah, it was probably a bit like that, and I think because I wasn't there as like a grieving mum, you know, sobbing my heart out, and I was there, but I wasn't there also. It was really aggressive. I think I was there as that middle sort of,
like you've had
very
to be
firm,
throughout your career,
very firm and very to the point, and quite hard hitting. So, but I would get to know each person, particularly on the politicians. I'd look at my history on that, and like Steve Barclay, when I met him, I knew he had a 10-year-old daughter. I thought, I'm going in hard here, because I thought this can't be any more closer to home for him than it is. I've got a 10-year-old I've just lost. And I went in really hard with him, and he actually did make the changes I want. And made him get quite emotional, to be honest, which they've never seen him ever. Get emotional, certainly my MP said. So so I do go in quite hard, but I think I've just got to be to the point. And go in with
you don't
that.
want to have meetings about meetings, right?
No,
you want to see
change.
And
I can't believe we're 3 years on now,
I can't believe it's only 3 years. I
wanted more change.
As in, no, but what you've achieved in that period of time.
Because I've had to start this from scratch.
Exactly.
And
off the back of losing your 10-year-old daughter, like, and the grief, and I just think, like, you're facing it every single day. Whereas, I mean, personally, when it comes to any form of trauma, I like to just park it and, you know, move on and deal with life. But you probably have days where you want to do that, but you can't, because your job is now your daughter's face.
And I think I'm really driven to make these changes, because I made that promise to her that I will do it. And I thought I'd never let my kids down if I've made a promise to them. And I will keep going. I think the Portsmouth News quoted me once on the paper going, while there's breath in my body, I'll keep fighting. Because that's true. I'm like, a few of my friends call me the tiger mum, like the one that will always fight for your kids. And that's
and now you're
definitely
fighting for
true,
everybody else's, and
and still fighting for my daughter, because I think this is her voice, so she's not here anymore, but I can still be her voice. And the voice to get what she wanted. Like, she wrote these things that she wanted changing, knowing that she was never going to see this change ever. But she had the ability to think of others
in that moment,
dying days, dying, a couple of months of going, actually, I want this changed, and I want you to promise me that you'll do it. But I think she also did it because I think she was worried about how I was going to cope. Because she kept saying, I'm worried about you, Mum. How are you going to cope when I'm gone? I'm like, stop.
Like, she knew you needed a distraction.
I think she'll think this will keep her busy.
And boy, it has kept you busy.
She's kept me very busy, because I stupidly asked her on things like, because I thought, I want to know, because I've got this one opportunity to try and find out as much I want from her before I can't. And I said, do you want me just to sort out Portsmouth, Southampton hospitals, make sure they feed them? She goes, no, you need to do the whole country. Why did I ask her? I should have just assumed. But she's right, because she said, what about all the other parents and all the other hospitals? You've got to change it to the whole country.
But I think now that I couldn't imagine a world without Sophie's legacy. Like, so even if you reach a point where you've made the changes that you set out to me, there will be other changes that you'll take on.
Loads of things I can think of.
Exactly,
and that's
right?
Why it's like, I've unleashed this sort of Pandora's box, and because I'm now in this world, and I've had to do the steepest learning curve I've ever done on politics and the NHS, of how they're all made up. The NHS is a minefield, but trust me, it's the biggest learning curve I've ever. I thought I knew a bit about it, but I knew nothing.
Really?
You knew the surface of what it's like to go into a hospital, but not actually how they're all set up and how they're run.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to make change.
Yeah.
And probably the two biggest, hardest institutions to make change in a timely fashion.
Politics and NHS.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're tackling both head on.
But I just thought there is so much we need to change. I do think we'll get the feeding parents around the country. I think that will happen first out of all of our wishes, and I think that could happen in the next year or two.
Do you feel even more positive about that now Labour have come in?
I would have had more. I think we would have got us through more of Conservatives actually, because there's more cutbacks at the moment for Labour.
Wow.
I think they've currently paused our council work, for example, children's council work, the task force. They've paused it all. But I'm backing We're Streeting on the beginning of November. He's got to answer me.
Cancelled.
They've paused it.
Right. So paused.
No reason
research.
to pause this work. So we did the whole task force, this children and cancer task force this year with the government, with Conservatives. Set this up. We pulled together the top people in the country, like from scientists, researchers, clinicians to charities. You know, the top people. Yeah. Got them all in a room and listed out how we can make change. It was like nothing's happened like this before. A real once in a lifetime opportunity to really make a difference and change outcomes for children. Yeah. And we pulled together some action lists, and they all got signed off on the last day of the Conservatives, and so that it was started. Yeah. And they did that so that they knew that the only way that this could not happen is that the new government was going to have to either cancel it or pause it. Right. And that's what they've done. So I am livid, beyond livid, to be honest, because there was no reason at all to pause it. Yeah. He says because he wants to make sure it's got actions and it's not just a task force. And I thought, he's not ready.
Do you know who she is, Keir Starmer? Don't know if there's going to be actions. Just bloody look up Sophie's legacy and you'll know that it's coming from Foundations of Action. Like, what the hell?
He's clearly not read.
What a stupid statement.
He's not read it, because all he'll see is it's all action points. It's just been agreed.
Have you already spoken with like Amanda Martin and people like that who are local that can...
So my MP, Caroline Dinage, is marked. It all has to be for your own MP.
She's Conservative, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. So it has to be for your own MP to go through to politics. Right. It can't be. You can't pick any other one. Right. It's frustrating. But we got lots of our supporters to write to their own MPs demanding for this to be reinstated. Yeah. And loads did. Okay. We're talking loads. Good. Hundreds and hundreds of people downloaded our template letter and sent it out, which is good. So it put pressure on the government, and they're now willing to see me. Yeah. And I'm good. They wanted to, I've said I want to see you in person. Yeah. I want you to look at me in my eyes and tell me why you've paused this. Yeah. So it's currently on pause, but you've got the meeting happening. Beginning of November. So is to add a word. Yeah, he's got answers. Why he's done it. And me and my MP, who's Caroline's just as forceful as I am. So he's probably taken on the two hardest people that in a room that he's going to try and take on, and I look forward to seeing what he's got to say. Yeah, can't wait. So you'll be coming face to face with Keir Starmer? No, so we're Streeting, who is the health secretary. Oh, he's the one that's paused it. Yeah. But what I have got is that he was the shadow health secretary of our debate back in April 22, when we had the first debate ever to be held in the House of Commons on children's cancer. Never ever has it been debated on the floor of the House. Loads on adults' cancer, never on children. Wow. Shocking, which is probably why it's not as advanced as it is. And Wes Streeting was the shadow health secretary who, I have the transcript of what he said that the government should be doing at that time. So he's like backtracked on himself. I'm now literally highlighting all of these bits. I'm going to quote back at him. Don't tell him that they're his words to start with. Honestly, you're in that seat now. Yeah. Why are you doing Isn't it crazy though that in this day and age you have to play these prehistoric games, And I shouldn't have to keep fighting as hard as I am to keep getting some of these changes. It should be way simpler. It's and it's really sad because in those 3 years we could have ended being much further ahead, but that's why I really, really want this change for Liquor. Yeah. But the feeding parents we've got a lot of traction now around the country. We've got some very exciting news that I can't quite share yet, but there's some good really, really good stuff that I think this will happen much quicker than any other of our wishes. Wow. And I think we'll get this national change for feeding parents, which
obviously as a permanent thing,
and it will be then mandatory for all hospitals to do.
When's your meeting with them about the pause?
So it's 6th of November.
6th of November, okay.
So
London, this episode will air on the 7th of November.
So look on our socials.
Yeah.
And you'll see whether the outcome.
Yeah, we will. And obviously, when this episode airs also, you would have already have been to the Pride of Britain Awards. I've seen the gorgeous dress. So you are the winner of the Pride of Britain Award, which... How does that make you feel?
I find it hard to take the personal praise, really. I always have done, because I think this is a collective. This is like, I might have been the one that's shouting from the rooftops and making the noise, but it takes more than just me to make
it takes a tribe.
This charity to work. I have an amazing team behind me, and incredible team of volunteers who all give up their time for Sophie's wishes and the wanting to make that difference, really, and
that change.
They we're doing it for all of them, and I'm ultimately doing it. This Pride of Britain thing is for Sophie. I think this is hers.
It's her legacy, isn't it?
It's she's the one that should be up there getting that. And I think that's why it's hard that it's just me. And but I'm and I've
it's like bittersweet, isn't it?
It is really, and I've battled for. Since I found out I won for the South. I've won the South, not the whole country yet.
Yes.
We'll find out in the next few weeks if I've won the country. But it's hard. But I know we've made change, and some of that. But
how do you cope with your mental health? Like, what do you do for you on that side of things? Because I mean, that must be an everyday battle.
It is. I think throughout her journey, I wrote a daily blog, which obviously became what is now all our followers. And I actually discovered that writing was quite therapeutic for me. Stuck in a room, not able to leave, and only having Sophie here was often asleep or not well, really, to talk to. But I didn't really want to be telling her what I was writing down either. But it became like my therapy, and I discovered how much writing actually was really good for me to get out what was in my head onto paper.
It makes a difference.
And not always to share with everyone, but often what ended up being our journey, we did. But when she died, I then obviously did a few things, but I've done a lot of writing. I've written a lot in my notes, things that were in my head, not shared it with anyone, but it's got it out of my head and processing it, really. I have amazing friends who have, helped me massively over the last few years, to be honest. Me and Sophie's dad separated last year. We've been together for 19 years. Wow. So it was, but sadly, obviously losing a child can have catastrophic impact on relationships. And so that wasn't how I thought life was going to go. But I think it's the right thing for us now. That's only when you look
still
back.
Must feel quite fresh, but
it's a year. It's over a year now that we've been separated. So it feels the right thing. For definite, we're both better off separated. You can see that really. But again, that was a huge thing at the time for me. I thought,
on top of everything else, you're juggling
pick myself up
too.
again. And somehow I, get used to being a single mum, which I never thought my life was going to be like, and still run a charity and still look after my kids now as a single mum. It hasn't been an easy ride, but I just think, I remember Hannah and our team saying at the time, going, "This is not the worst thing you've been through. You've been through the ultimate worst.
The ultimate,
and you can get through everything else.
Worst nightmare."
And it was probably the best thing she said to me at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right.
This too shall pass.
I can get through this, and we will." And I just carried on as usual from working, but had to get a better balance. Someone said really with the kids, because I needed to look after them. So I think I've always been a very positive person, and trying to look at things in a positive way I find much easier
Yeah.
than looking at things on a negative.
Like making the lemonade from the lemons kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I've suffered with my mental health most of my life,
Yeah.
you know, with depression and stuff, and, you know, stuff from different things that have happened over my life is definitely impacted on that. But I always try to use those experiences rather than them, you know, I know that they've definitely shaped who I am, but rather than taking over my life, I want to take the control back and actually then go and make a difference by using them in a different way.
Yeah, rather than them hindering you.
Yeah, and saying, no, you're not having the control. I'm going to take some of that control back and I'll go out and make a difference, or I'll go off and do that and have that ability to be able to make a positive change no matter what happens. And I prefer to live that life rather than feeling depressed all the time or feeling down or not able to do stuff. I struggle with that.
No, that makes sense, and I just said it's just so brave, just so brave, and I just think it's just so phenomenal that one of Sophie's wishes was, you know, the thing that catapulted you quicker, you know, out of what could have been a really, really dark, miserable place. And, you know, it's nothing to say that I'm sure you still experience those dark, miserable places, no doubt at all. It, I guess, helps in some way, shape or form, right?
Definitely. I remember I spent 1 week in bed after she died. It was things after a funeral, and you just think, I've got nothing to get up for. I've dead my other girls, but I thought if someone else could take them to school, someone else would feed them, I don't want to get up for anything. I felt like I just lost on my purpose. Thought, how am I going to carry on? And so I'd spent a week in bed and didn't really do anything. And I thought by the end of that week, and I feel even worse than I did at the beginning of the week. This is not going to help me. And I thought,
because then comes the guilt of
feeling more crap, just more and more down, because all you're doing is looking at photos or videos or just pining and crying and making yourself feel worse. And I just had this little voice in my head, and often think whether it was Sophie, and I thought it was saying, get up out of bed and do what you've promised that you told me I was going to do. And from that day on, I've got up every day, and I've just got more and more, you know, things that I've crammed into my day. And for me, that has felt easier. And not to take away the pain, because that pain lives with me. I've said it's my life sentence. That will never go. But it's easier for me to be busier and feeling that I can function than it is to be in bed not doing anything and feeling more. I think I would have killed myself if I'd carried on. So it's given me a purpose to get up and to go and see, you know, the difference that we can make.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. And especially when, you know, we got a message yesterday from someone up in Yorkshire way. We're funding a hospital up there. The most incredible message I think I've ever had of the difference just having some food has made to her. Of her life and her story, and I just thought, wow, a girl from down here has made this difference around the country,
and it's not going to stop. You've given me, my hairs have been standing on end for the last 10 minutes, but I just know in your being in your presence now, and I know that we've been a supporter of Sophie's Legacy in our own little way, but now meeting you in person, you know from the minute you meet you why, how, where, when, and it's not going to stop. Sorry. You're not chilling anytime soon.
As long as I've still got, I've said, as long as I've got breath in my body, I'll keep fighting.
100%.
And when I'm not here, I need someone else to take it over. But I would keep going, because I don't know when my days are up either, but I just will keep going for as long as I can.
And even when the food's ticked off, you can just
so much.
So much to change. So we'll take it down a notch for us all now, and ask you some of our quickfire questions. So first of all, I want to ask you, what would you say is the most politely rebellious thing you've ever done?
Oh, now you're on the spot.
So it obviously has to be law abiding.
Well, God, that's a good one. That's a really hard one for me to think of now. I remember nicking a cone when I was like a teenager, bringing that home. That was pretty like.
Like an orange cone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And put it in my bedroom and mum coming in going, what have you got? It's a bit drunk. I don't know, I was trying to catch put me on the spot now. I've probably done quite a few things. But.
I mean, one of the things I would say just from chatting to you is when you just said about getting out of bed after that week.
Yeah.
Because it's so much easier, I think, for somebody to wallow in, you know, all of that pain, and it's much more politely rebellious, I think, because you must have faced judgment from people in some way, shape or form for bouncing back in the way that you have done.
We get, because we're on social media and we have a lot of followers, we sadly do get some trolls, and it's hard to hear. I bet. It's personal against me, which is not always easy at all, because I take things quite deeply. And I thought, you just don't know me, because it's not me. Like, they're saying I'm after fame, or it's all about me, and some comments like that, and I just thought,
which is just terrible. You don't know me, you didn't know Sophie, you don't know the conversations we had, and
you couldn't be firm
take
from
a
the truth,
freaking minute to listen to the change that's happened and the change that's coming, because you were politely rebellious and got out of your bed
and I just
your
think
hair and went,
try and spend a day in my shoes,
and
live with this grief and tell me what way you would do it.
Do one,
because this is hard.
Do one, 100%, absolutely. Are you a Swiftie or not a Swiftie?
Not a Swiftie.
No, me neither.
Really.
Me neither.
My daughters will kill me for this.
I know. I did. That's why I put that in there, because I thought having daughters.
Yeah, they are.
One way or the
They
other,
went
right?
to Lucy went to
really?
the concert this year.
But it's funny though, because I'm not a Swiftie, but if a song comes on the radio, you know.
Still sing it. Yeah, I know.
McDonald's or Burger King?
Oh, I like the chips and Burger King, but the food at McDonald's.
Yes. Oh my God, you're so right.
Yeah.
Spot on. Red or white? Obviously, we're talking about wine here.
White.
Really?
Or rosé.
Rosé, yeah, same. Sun or the moon?
Sun.
Are you a sun worshipper?
I like the warmth. Don't like being cold.
Yeah, no, same. And TV on the sofa or TV in bed?
Oh, TV in bed.
Oh yeah, it's the best, isn't it? Yeah. And do you know what? Sometimes I'll be sat on my sofa watching telly, and I'll be like, "Why am I sat on my sofa?" Like, especially now my son's a bit older, and so he doesn't need me sat downstairs if he's in his like playroom or whatever gaming.
Yeah, I know. Keep warm.
Yeah, especially at this hot water bowl. But I can't thank you enough for coming in and taking time to spend with us. And honestly, if you are not aware of Sophie's legacy, please make sure you become aware and in the know. You can donate in many ways, different shapes and forms. You can support the cause in lots of different ways. So please go on to Sophie's Legacy on social media and on the website. I believe you're also selling tickets now for the charity ball for 2025.
Yeah, it's in March.
So black
got
tie.
many tables left. So if anyone does, please get in touch, because we literally only have a few tables left.
Perfect. That's how it should be.
Yeah. But we have Sophie's 10k in December, so you can go and get a medal. She designed these medals in the last few weeks of her life.
Amazing.
She wanted people to move. She was bedbound, and she said, I just want to tell people they've got to move while they still can.
Yeah.
So it's £15 for a medal that she designed.
Gosh, she was such a wise cookie.
You don't have to go and do a 10k run.
Yeah.
You can do 1k in your lunch hour every day for 10 days.
Yeah.
A walk, cycle, swim, whatever it is. She just wanted people to move.
Yeah.
And to get a medal, £15 for the medal. It's on our website.
Amazing.
So we want to really get. It's our last of our 3 medals. So we really want to push this last one as hard as we can.
Amazing. So let's do that.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we
get people moving in December, and you'll feel better.
Yes, you will.
You feel. I know that. You feel so much better for doing it.
Winter walks are the best as well,
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah.
If you can just cozy
Dress up
yourself
well.
into them. Yeah. Good old scarf and pair of gloves, and you'll be fine. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.